right, Nick, as the quarterback position becomes ever more prevalent in the NFL, teams have to plan their succession plans more and more. And some teams, the plan doesn't quite work out the way they thought it did. And I think this is the case for the Atlanta Falcons. What do you think about all of this?
Yeah, so the Falcons did pretty much everything right. They locked up Matt Ryan, who was a franchise quarterback years ago. And, when you lock up your guy, when you find your guy, you have to surround him with weapons. They obviously already had Julio Jones. They locked him up. They brought in Calvin Ridley. Last year they drafted Kyle Pitts. So they did everything right. You got your quarterback, you surrounded him with weapons. It just didn't really work out. Julio Jones kind of got a little older, wore out his welcome a little bit. Obviously the issues with Ridley leaving the team for mental health issues last year, and obviously now with suspension. And Ryan got older. His play fell off a little bit. So once that happens, it's like, okay, now we just need another quarterback. We need another guy. Falcons owner Arthur Blank talked about a succession plan. So they allegedly, they're walking it back a little now, they went all in on Watson, and that just didn't work out either. All right, so they did everything right. You got your veteran quarterback. They locked him up, got players around him. He got a little older, so you try and replace him. So step 3, you got to look for the future. They signed Marcus Mariota. I don't think that's the future. I think no one in Atlanta really thinks he's a long-term fit. So I think right now the right choice is to play for 2023 and get a guy like Bryce Young, Alabama, who right now looks like the top prospect next year's draft. And that's okay. I don't think there's any problems with that. They did everything right, or tried to, with Matt Ryan, and then they tried to replace Matt Ryan, and just the cards didn't fall right. Sometimes that happens, and now you just got to look to the future.
Yeah, and it reminds me a lot of the Cincinnati Bengals when you had a stalwart at the quarterback position. Andy Dalton was there for a number of years, but then you go head coaching change, philosophy change, team gets a little bit stagnant, one and done in the playoffs a lot, and then they move on from Dalton, and they look towards the future. They get that number 1 draft pick. You get Joe Burrow. You get a new coach in Zach Taylor. The whole team starts to turn around now. And I think this is like how the Falcons were since the Super Bowl that they lost, that we don't like to talk about for the Falcons fans that much. We'll move on. Matt Ryan's kind of like gone, more in the middle, more Andy Dalton line-esque than upper echelon. He's still a great quarterback, but the performance, not so much of Matt Ryan, but of the Atlanta Falcons, has been very middling for the last couple of years. They've been stagnant, but then you move on from your head coach, you get a new coach in there, and you get rid of your old quarterback. He moves over to the Colts, which I think is a great move for them, but this could be a great move for Atlanta. You go in on Watson. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe that's not where you needed to look, but you can look forward to the draft. With the draft picks you get from the Ryan trade, I think looking forward to the draft could be your Joe Burrow moment. Joe Burrow came out of nowhere, but he was like the highest rated prospect coming out of college that year. We've known about Bryce Young for a while, and if he has a big year, I think this could be another Joe Burrow-esque prospect. Don't you think?
Yeah, exactly right. Young has all the potential. He looks like he's going to be a clear-cut number 1, or at least top 5, top 10 choice in the draft next year. And, we talk about it sometimes. Organizations sometimes just need to change at the quarterback position. A good example is like, the Patriots. You brought up the Bengals. Granted, the Patriots at Tom Brady. Sometimes you just need a reset. The Patriots, as weird as it sounds, they were kind of a little bit on the decline. They got knocked out in the first round by the Titans. They kind of had to reload the roster next year, the following year anyway. So it's kind of where the Falcons are at. Sometimes you get stagnant. You reach the peaks, but then you get in a rut. And sometimes a change at the organization and a reset is a good thing. I think that's what the Falcons are facing here. And to bring in a young, fresh quarterback. And by the way, Bryce Young, he played in the SEC in Alabama, has played in the Mercedes-Benz, the old Superdome, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, in the SEC championship game. So guess what? He knows the lay of the land.
It's like home for him, almost.
Oh yeah, this is going to be it just seems like a very natural fit, a guy like Young in Atlanta. And I think we're not going to use the word tanking. We're not saying that at all. You go out and try to win the games you can. But you don't put yourself in a situation, you don't commit a lot of dollars in salary cap or try and move up in the draft this year. If anything, you move back and try and get draft capital, like you alluded to make sure you have the ammo next year to get a guy like Young.
Yeah, I like you don't want to go all in, have the pieces, maybe get some wide receivers. I'll build your offensive line up, get ready this year, but you can move back to like the 20s, maybe even to the second round of the draft, and hopefully trade. I would start picking up picks for next year's draft. Trade back, get for picks for next year's draft, well, if you get up in the top 2 or 3, that's an option. But if you're not expecting to get there, at least have the capital to trade up to that far. Because just like we say with Willis and everyone else, Malik Willis in this draft, he doesn't have quite the pedigree or the hype around him that Bryce Young has. So if we're projecting him to go in the top 5, Young is definitely going in like the top 2 guys. So you got to be ready to get him there. But I think, like you said, if they do that, this could pay off dividends for the Atlanta Falcons, and they're going to have a future for this.